What's up, guys? Not sure if you got me good yet, but you're about to get me good. You're about to get a good dose of some Legally Owned America Stay Alive at 5 gun news, guys. I'm going to start doing something a little bit different from now on. Let me pause this music and get it slide on out of here. Folks, we're going to try doing some pretty cool stuff going forward. First of all, happy to see everybody here. And I will do like I normally do on my live streams and give you guys shout outs. A lot of you guys, I see some familiar faces in the room already. We're going to let a few other people get in here. But what I'm going to do, this is kind of a pilot that I'm doing for Stay Alive, Stay Alive at 5 Gun News. What I intend to do is, since it's a little bit difficult to spit out these videos as quickly as a lot of us do, and I do like to keep these videos out on a weekly basis, but certainly on a daily basis. The daily basis keeps everything out there. We talk about this all the time. The news media has a knack for putting out fake news and incorrect news, shaped news, molded news, news that they have molded into their own and somewhat poison the message that needs to get out. Is my take on all of these events going to be biased? Of course it is, but biased based on fairness and constitutional rights and the Second Amendment. So yes, I'm going to have a slant to it, but I'm not going to lie to you. And that's where the news media is getting it all wrong. They're lying to you. Yes, I'm okay if they're biased, but at least report what's happening. Don't give me your version of what's happening. Give me what's happening and give me your opinion. I'm okay with that. But a different version altogether, that's disingenuous and that's a lie. So my goal is to start putting out news every single day at the exact same time. Guys, some days it may be a 5-minute news segment. Some days it might be 35 minutes. Some days it might be an hour. I got it at 5 o'clock right now. I am Central Standard Time, so this is 5 o'clock Central Standard Time for me. I'm probably going to have to push this a slight bit earlier than 5 o'clock because, you know, I am a family guy and I am, in many cases, a one-man show. So I'm doing all this on my own right now as a one-man show. And, of course, I have my wife that gets home a little bit in the afternoon and she's gonna not want me. I'm joking when I say that, but yeah, she is coming home. So I usually try to get some supper cooked and all that, but I'm watching my son right now. So my goal is to get all of this in. If I feel like this can be put in enough time before I'm having to cook dinner or whatever, because I like to cook. I'm actually a pretty good cook too. Then that's going to be my goal. But what I'll do is I'll go over current events. I'll update some things on some other stories that we've been working on. I'll talk about some things that maybe nobody knows about. I'll bring up some political things. Now, are my other videos going to change? No, I'm still going to put out all of my other content. I'm just trying to find a very consistent place to put a live stream out there to give bite-sized pieces of news that either some of us may have during the day, haven't a chance to up on. And again, my goal is to make sure that we talk about things before the news media has a chance to poison that news and give us bad information. One of the first things that I do want to talk about, and let me pull my screen up real quick, is going to be what's happening over in the Ohio area. Officers will not face state charges in Jayland Walker police shooting. You guys may know about this one. If you don't, I don't have a video of the actual shooting itself, but this may jog your memory a little bit, no pun intended. A grand jury has chosen not to indict officers on state criminal charges for the death of Jayland Walker, 25-year-old who was fatally shot after a car and foot chase by police on June 27th of 2022. This was last summer. You guys may remember this, in Akron, Ohio. The grand jury just a little while ago, this was today, issued what is called a no bill, meaning that there will be no state criminal action, no charges at the state level. This is against the law enforcement officers. Officers have said they had attempted to pull Walker over for a traffic violation and an equipment violation with his car. He apparently refused to stop, which set off a chase that ended in his death. Officers said a flash of light seen in body camera footage appeared to be the muzzle flash of a gun coming from the driver's side of Walker's car. In his second body camera video, officers are heard radioing that a shot was being fired from Walker's car. The footage shows an officer following Walker's car and continuing the pursuit on side streets. Mr. Walker took at least one shot from his vehicle at the police, led them on a chase, and exited from his vehicle in a ski mask, ignoring multiple commands by officers to show his hands and to stop, Yost said, adding there is no conclusive evidence as to where he was pointing his gun. Of course, you see some of the protests that started up last year on this. They've kind of been in waiting. This is a pretty well-funded protest, and they kind of been waiting on what this verdict was going to be. Tonight might get a little hot. At one point, Walker slowed down and jumped out of the passenger side vehicle before the vehicle came to a full stop, according to the footage. According to Ohio Attorney General's office, officers attempted to use stun guns to subdue him. Mr. Walker then reached for his waistband in what several officers have described as a cross draw motion, planting his foot and turning toward the officers while raising his hand. Various officers indicated in their statements that they heard a gunshot and they responded to the gunshot thinking that it was Mr. Walker who was shooting. As Walker ran away from the police, 8 officers simultaneously fired at him, fatally shooting him. Walker had 46 gunshot wounds to his body. According to officials, the officers fired 94 shots at Walker, which right there tells you they missed half, which is actually the normal percentage of most types of shootings with a high elevated rate of adrenaline. You're missing half of your shots. A gun was recovered inside the car. His death prompted protests across the city and calls for civil rights leaders for accountability and justice. Jaylen was the best. Well, we're not going to go into that. We hear this all the time. I'm not going to slam the guy, but at the same time, I'm going to try to stay away from the propaganda. This is his mother right there. No, I'm sorry. That's not. That's an activist. That's not a picture of his mother. I don't want to speculate as to what Mr. Walker was thinking at the time, but I can say this, that it has been made public that Mr. Walker was going through a very tough time in his life. I think it's been documented that Mr. Walker's fiance had died a short time before this incident happened, and he was going through a very tough time, and he was hurting. Doesn't mean you can shoot at cops. None of the officers involved in the Walker shooting or their attorneys have previously spoken publicly about the case. The officers were on paid leave following the fatal shooting before being brought back for administrative duty in the department amid a staffing crisis. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this. I'm going to go not terribly deep into this because I mainly want to hear a lot of what you guys have to say. First of all, tonight is going to be on fire, and probably literally speaking. This group of people is, if they're not already well funded, they're going to be funded. The group that's going to assemble here, nothing besides these people going to trial and getting a guilty verdict would have satisfied these folks. We know how this acts. It's the same old thing every single time. It doesn't matter how innocent or guilty the person who died is. He's going to be portrayed as a third grader in most of the pictures that you're going to see. And again, I'm not passing judgment on this guy. I don't know what happened. What I'll try to do, and maybe we'll pull this up for tomorrow, I will see if I can find some of the body cam footage and some of the footage that has been released on this. I haven't talked much about this on my show because some of the information and data was a little bit slow coming out. And in this case, I think it had a lot to do, and this was strange that the law enforcement officers and the city themselves in Akron stayed very quiet about this. In many cases, you see a lot of body cam footage immediately get released. And I know some stuff was out there, but I don't know how quickly it got released. But at first, it made me think that law enforcement was completely at fault because nothing was coming out. And I was like, well, usually when there's a delay in this stuff coming out, there's a reason for that. But it's starting to look like maybe these law enforcement officers, I don't want to say overreacted. I do believe, based on the information I have seen, that it was a justified shoot. But 8 law enforcement officers unloading 94 rounds at one person whenever they think they heard one gunshot seems a little excessive to me. Full disclosure, I am not a law enforcement officer. I am not a super duper massive tactical Billy Badass, none of that kind of stuff. So I am putting myself as a normal guy who puts work boots on and blue jeans every single day. I am relating to my opinion of this situation. Again, I'm trying not to be like the media and tell you what should have happened, because unless you're in that situation and you think you're being fired at, I think everybody reacts differently. And I'm not trying to defend the officers either, because it, again, seems excessive to me. But unless there's a protocol that says, all right, guys, when a potential guy starts shooting at us, one guy gets to shoot at a time until the suspect goes down. I don't think that's how it works. You are told to neutralize the threat, and every guy is trying to neutralize that threat because you are assuming people are going to miss, which they did. They fired 94 times, hit him 40 something times. So half of the rounds missed. If this guy was truly a threat, there's a very good chance he could have killed, injured, hurt, whatever, some of the law enforcement officers by shooting at them. So their goal was to neutralize him. So again, if they say they found the gun at the scene inside the car, if that was the case, I don't know based on this yet if there was a round missing. Remember, they said one shot they believe was fired, and I think they saw a muzzle flash. I didn't see it in this article. I'll dig a little bit tomorrow and see if I can't report something back tomorrow night. But I haven't seen yet where they say there was one spent casing or one round missing from the magazines. I don't know that yet. My reason for bringing this up is that this just happened today, and maybe the George Soros funded people haven't had time to print out their signs and put the pallets of bricks on the street corners and fill up their Molotov cocktails yet. So maybe it's a little quiet tonight. In other words, maybe it is a true peaceful protest tonight. But look for things to get a little spicy when the Al Sharptons and some of those other race baiters have a chance to go over to Akron, Ohio, and stir up the people in the local community and bust additional people in. I think this thing happened kind of fast, so there's a very good chance that they haven't had a chance to prepare for this like they would have for the George Floyds or the Michael Brown. Remember, Michael Brown was the guy who reached into the car and tried taking the cop's gun, and he said, hands up, don't shoot. That was a justified shoot. Definitely. We're not going to be sitting here talking about St. Michael Brown anytime soon. In this particular instance, I think there's still more that's probably going to come out. We just don't know a whole lot about it right now as far as what they saw in court today. I imagine tomorrow a whole lot more information is going to come out about what was shared on this and how these law enforcement officers did, in fact, get off. But again, just to recap, the officers in this shooting will not face state charges in the Jayland Walker police shooting. Now, let's keep this in mind, guys. That doesn't mean that this is over. And that's maybe why we will see a little bit of a slowness in the information coming out. Maybe it doesn't all come out tomorrow. And the reason why I say that is because it's very likely, especially now that the family wanted swift action to be taken against these law enforcement officers, the family of Jayland Walker, is a very good chance that these folks now are going to file a civil suit against these same law enforcement officers. And more than likely, the city of Akron will get a lawsuit placed against them as well. So don't think this is over. And again, if you wake up tomorrow and go look for information, you're probably not, and you may not see it simply because those civil charges are likely to be inbound anytime now. So just look for that, guys. All right, let me drop this screen here. I'm going to pull my next screen up, and we'll go to some questions at the end of this segment. Guys, I just want you all to know that, this is a pilot that I'm doing here to see if we're going to do this show again and every single day. I'm hoping to do it every day. I just can't rightly commit to it just yet because there's so much going on. Okay, let's talk about this. This is pretty interesting to me. Bill protecting Second Amendment becomes law without Kentucky governor's signature. If you'll remember, in Louisville, Kentucky, we had a shooting the other day. Remember that the law enforcement folks came out. This is the shooting in this particular instance where, again, I'd call this person a protected person, is where a disgruntled employee who, there's mixed stories out there right now where they said he was either notified that he was going to be terminated or he went in and was not terminated yet. So that's the mixed story right now. Nobody can really confirm that right now, but he went in and shot a bunch of his former employees or maybe current employees, and also some of the, bosses over there, some of the people in charge. He did all of this stuff, and that was kind of, I think the word was that the guy was, it's come out now that he had a suicide note, I believe, or a note that he wrote that included that he had been suicidal. The family came out and the family stated that they were also going to, or getting ongoing some treatment for this guy for his mental health issues and all that. So here again, we have the mental health issue involved. More than likely, he was medicated because he was seeing a psychiatrist. The implications were that he was seeing a psychiatrist. So he would have been medicated. And of course, black box warning, drugs, it would be what he was taking. Nevertheless, this governor had come out, and he's a Democrat governor. He had come out and really skated around. I was very surprised to see Governor Beshear of Kentucky not come out and repeat the same old regurgitated, vomited talking points of gun violence. He continually said violence. In fact, he painstakingly made it a point to not call it violence. My guess is he's coming up for re-election is why he did that, because Kentucky is not exactly the most rampantly liberal state. Well, this just happened. Kentucky HB 153, the bill which prohibits state employees from cooperating with any federal infringements on Second Amendment rights, passed after January 1st, 2021, became law on March 28, 2023, without a signature from Governor Andy Beshear. The bill was passed on March 15th. Remember, this is before the Louisville shooting. Governor Beshear had until March 27th to veto the bill or to sign it. Governor Beshear did neither, and the bill became law on March 28, 2023. Now, I imagine he's probably going to get some blowback on this, because after this Louisville shooting, the mayor of Louisville did come out, which he's very anti-gun anyway, the mayor came out and spoke heavily against gun violence, used that term repeatedly. And Beshear, the governor, did not. The mayor did. So my guess is, from the anti-gun movement and the gun control mob out there, they're likely going to attack Governor Beshear for allowing this to go through. And essentially what this is, it creates a Second Amendment sanctuary state for Kentucky, which means that any potential laws that might go out there and violate the Second Amendment, then they will not be enforcing those using public funding. Let me read a little bit of this. The General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Kentucky finds that Section 1 of the Constitution of Kentucky provides in part that all men have an inalienable right to bear arms in defense of themselves and of the state. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States reserves to the states and people all powers not granted to the federal government. I love that statement. The Supreme Court of the United States, in the case of Prince versus United States, affirmed that the federal government does not have the authority to commandeer local or state agents to enforce federal policy. Again, what this is implying and stating very clearly and very nicely, I might add, is that the federal government doesn't give us the right to bear arms. It recognizes that right. It openly states that they acknowledge that we as Americans have that right inherently. It's our right already. They're saying, yes, I see your right. Now, obviously, our federal government doesn't feel that way today. That's where our founding fathers thought of this and thought of this very plainly. And that's why they wrote this into an amendment instead of just thinking that it was an implied right that we would be able to exercise. I think they felt that it would be threatened at some point. Therefore, they included it in the Bill of Rights. Well, the state of Kentucky is saying that, okay, the federal government is already recognizing this right to keep and bear arms. If the federal government, and looking at how the ATF is trying to do things, intends to push things onto all the 50 states that are going to now infringe upon the Second Amendment, the state of Kentucky will not utilize any local or federal funding, or state funding to enforce those. And what I mean by that is the ATF does not have a, quote, police force. They have to commandeer people from the states whenever they want to, quote, do business as they do in the states. So without the help of local law enforcement, whether it's city, county, or state, without those people cooperating, the ATF does not mobilize and just go into a state and arrest people or try to enforce laws. They can't do that. They have to use the help of the local people, the local law enforcement. Kentucky is saying we're not going to do that. Now, Kentucky is not the only state that does that. There are other states that currently do that. We actually tried to do this down here in Louisiana one time, and it looks like we have a bunch of cowards that are in our state and our Senate. Nevertheless, Kentucky does have this law now. Look for the governor to get a lot of blowback from this simply because of the current events down there, which are completely unrelated, because this was a wacko that shot these people in Louisville. But they still, anything that's tied to a gun law in some kind of way will certainly get people riled up. And case in point, I want to talk real quick about the NRA show this past weekend while I change this slide to go to my next news. And if it seems like I'm moving fast, I am moving fast. I'm trying to get as much information in here as quickly as I can to not waste too much of your time. But speaking of the NRA show, I went out to the NRA annual meeting this weekend, and there were cries out there that somehow the NRA, let me get rid of this real quick while I'm talking about this, that the NRA somehow, in fact, let me change this too. I just want to remind you guys, if you want to ever email me, there were cries out there that the NRA somehow should not have had the NRA annual meeting in Indianapolis, which was planned since last year. They didn't plan this because of the Louisville shooting. They didn't plan this because of the Nashville shooting. That's not why they planned this. Tennessee, Kentucky, and any other state that had a shooting of some sort, it's not the reason why the NRA annual meeting took place. Now, I've got my own opinions about the NRA and where they stand. Nevertheless, the NRA annual meeting is planned a year in advance, well of a year in advance, every single year. And you have the news media going out there right now talking, and we will share it right here because this is part of a segue to go into this comment section right here regarding our boy, Joe Biden. Biden touts common sense reforms, but reality doesn't match his rhetoric. Let's look down here at what Joe Biden had to say. Let's see. Can I get down to where Biden is running his mouth? Let me find that. Where in the world is it? Oh, here it is. All right. In a statement Sunday, Joe Biden criticized Republicans for standing alongside the NRA in a race to the bottom on dangerous laws that further erode gun safety, while failing to acknowledge or mention the inconvenient fact, for him anyway. And by the way, I pulled this story from Bearing Arms. The last story I got was from AmmoLand. Let's see. While failing to acknowledge or mention the inconvenient fact, for him anyway, that Democrat-controlled states with plenty of gun control laws already in place still have their own issues with criminals getting a hold of guns. So essentially what we dealt with was Joe Biden coming out and trying to shame, or at least making a failed attempt at trying to shame the NRA for having their convention on the heels of what happened in Kentucky and Louisville. You'll remember they tried the same tactic last year because the Uvalde murders took place just prior to the NRA show in Houston, Texas last year. So about a week difference in time there. The problem is, and it's their problem, not mine and not yours, is that these are completely unrelated. When you have an organization like the NRA that has an annual meeting or a convention or whatever you intend to call them, they don't do this based on what's happening in the news. They're not looking at current events to decide whether or not they're going to have their convention. They have these anyway. These other things just happen. This is a failed attempt to try to shame an organization, and they try to do this with everything. Anytime, like they try to shame you as a gun owner, that anytime a tragedy happens with a gun, and in many cases, it's their own voting constituents. It certainly was in Nashville. It certainly was in Louisville. And again, it sounds like the quote mass shooting, gang-related shooting in Alabama that happened Saturday night is their voters also. So they're trying to shame you for their people putting out these shootings. They're trying to make you feel bad. I wonder if anybody has ever attempted to ask them, what are you doing about your people? Because their people are the ones committing the majority of these crimes, and especially here lately. I'm not saying that other people from political backgrounds don't commit these crimes. Of course they do. Not implying that at all. My point is they're trying to shame you as a legal law-abiding gun owner for what somebody else did. If we really want to start tagging blame to it, we can start tagging blame to it and look at the numbers of their folks who are doing this and bounce this back to them. There's no reason for them to try to shame us because we have very little, if anything, in common with the people who are committing these crimes right now. We have a transgender shooter in Nashville. I don't have a whole lot in common with that person. Oh, you want to make it about race? Okay. So she was white and I'm white. Does that make me responsible? Does that make me suddenly responsible for shooting up a Christian school because I'm a white person? Now, she wanted to be a white man like me. She was not. But does that mean that now I'm responsible? That I shouldn't make other plans? That I shouldn't plan to go to the NRA annual meeting because a white tranny somehow or another decided to shoot up a Christian school? No, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. This person committed a heinous act, including murder. And so did their person in Louisville last week. So trying to project this onto me as something that I should feel guilty of, it bounces right off of me, guys. And I'm sure most of you feel the same way. This doesn't affect me in the least. I'm not the least bit shameful for going to Indianapolis or doing anything else in my normal life after these types of shootings happen, partly because I've done my best to try to point out the truth about these types of shootings and talk about how different people, like the trans person in Nashville and like the guy in Louisville, ought to get help. Nobody on the left is talking about getting these people help. Do you realize these are their people, including this boy right here, Joe Biden? It's their people doing this, yet they're seeking to do no help. Their call is simply for an assault weapons ban, magazine capacity, you name it, the little catchphrases that they like to throw out there in instances like this. All those things are things that they're calling for, and not one single call is about trying to get people the help they need to not make the decision to kill people. How stupid is that? How stupid do you have to be to stand on a hill and scream and cry as loud as you can to try to fix something, and you never once look for the true root cause of it? All you want to do is look at, once their brain has decided to kill people, you want to change what they use to kill people. That's about the laziest, stupidest thing that I think I've ever heard of. And Joe Biden is one of the main ones doing that right now. Let's move on, guys. I can't stand to look at this guy's picture. I honestly can't. Let's see. Let me try to find what was one of the other topics that I wanted. Oh, I know what it was. Let me grab this. I want to talk real quickly and forgive me one second. I want you to see how the media, and more specifically Google in this case, how they tend to shape what you do. I use other, and I'm not sponsored by any of these search engines or anything like that. In fact, I would like to throw out a little bit of support for my friends over at CMMG Rifles, cmmg.com. Go check them out. Falco Holsters also, big supporter of the show. And of course, my friends over at Rock Island Armory, I would certainly like to give a big shout out for them. But I want you guys to see the dishonesty that we deal with on a regular basis. I'm going to pull up Google, and I want to show you how these search engines try to manipulate how we think, what we see, and what we're actually consuming as far as news on the internet. Check this out real quick. Okay, here's a Google page. I want you to see this. I'm punching in shooting, right? Now, the most recent shooting that I know of is, of course, the shooting involving the Alabama Sweet 16 birthday party. Look at this. Look what pops up first. Top stories. Teen shot after going to wrong house in Kansas City. You have to go down a little ways before you see the Alabama shooting. So this top shooting over here is one that the anti-gun, I guess, big corporations of tech are trying to do, Google, trying to do to get you to think a certain way, to make you mad, to make you feel like you should support the defund the police and the Black Lives Matter folks. Now, I don't have an opinion on this particular shooting yet because I don't know enough about it. In fact, I learned about this shooting whenever I punched in shooting. What the story seems to be is outrage grows over the shooting of a black teenager who rang the wrong doorbell. It would appear that this shooter, or excuse me, this kid, this young person, 16 years old, that, and of course they're going to have protests in Kansas City tonight over this, that an 80-year-old man, 80 or 82-year-old man was at his house, and it's liable to say down here. If not, I'll pick more up on this story. All right, what's popping up over here? Let me get rid of this crap. That this kid was, here we go. Shortly before 10 p.m. on Thursday, April 13th, police were called to a residence in Clay County, Missouri, in the northern part of Kansas City. Found that a teenager had been shot in front of the residence by a homeowner. Teenager was transported to the hospital. Now, we don't know if the teen was shot in the street where he laid. He laid right in the street. It says, according to Yarl's family, that's the young man who got shot, the teenager was planning to pick up his younger siblings from a friend's house, but he drove to the wrong address, his family says, confusing 115th Street for 115th Terrace. He parked in the driveway, went up to the door, and rang the doorbell. His aunt said in a video posted to social media. The man inside opened up the door and shot him in the head through the glass door. Okay, so now they're saying apparently the kid ran off because they were implying earlier that maybe he was shot in the street, like he'd been chased down. Well, the man shot him, according to this, through the glass door in his front door. When Raphael was on the ground, he shot him again. Again, can't confirm any of that. That's the kid right there. The kid is actually this. I don't think this story says it right here, but this kid is at home. I don't know what he got shot with. I don't know if he just got grazed in the head or what. But according to the story I read earlier, this kid is already home, released from the hospital. He's not dead, and seems like he's going to make a full recovery according to this. But that's the story that popped up. There was a shooting. Remember, I told you yesterday in my live stream that they were going to bury this Alabama shooting, even though 4 people had been killed at it. The reason why is because it was a opposing factions shooting, gang-related type shooting that took place. I'm comfortable calling that now. I said it yesterday that this is what it appeared to be, and it does appear that it is. In fact, they still are not talking about the actual shooter for obvious reasons because they're trying to bury this story. They have successfully pushed this story from being the top story. If this had been a madman going into a Sweet 16 party and killing 4 people and shooting another 20 people, this would be all over the news today. It was hard enough to find yesterday. And now, even though this should be a top story, it's slowly getting buried. Tomorrow, you're going to see this story pushed down even more. And so we have 4 people killed, 20 shot, yet the headline is a kid, a 16-year-old, who got shot by somebody, likely an 80-something-year-old man, probably thought he was defending his property. I really doubt this was a Klansman that hunted this kid down and tried to shoot him. And we don't have the full story. We don't know if the man followed him outside and shot him again. We don't know that. This is people saying things that are looking at lawsuits and whatnot right now. So we are already having a story where a young man has already been released from the hospital and is sitting at home, not dead, burying a story where 4 16-year-olds have died. That's how the media operates. The media would rather drive a narrative to get a neighborhood stoked up so that they can sell ads during a riot, during a peaceful protest, because they're hoping that these people protest. Now, my guess is you're likely going to see this story pushed down, which is going to push the Alabama story down, and that Jayland Walker story that we just talked about in Akron, Ohio, where they're likely going to start getting geared up to riot. That's liable to be the top story tomorrow because we're liable to see more information out about that. My point in all this is not taking a side on Jayland Walker or this Ralph Yarl shooting that you're looking at right here. It's more that the media is creating their own narrative. They are taking the news and deciding what they want you to see. They're not letting you make choices. They're not putting the most popular stories at the top. They're telling you what the most popular story is and hoping that you will feed that algorithm in order to keep their story as the top story, especially on other search engines and other platforms. They're doing this to manipulate what you consume as news and how you look at it. And of course, look at the top stories here that are doing it. You've got the New York Times, NPR, CBS News. Those are definitely 3 right there. I'm surprised CNN and MSNBC are not thrown in here as well. But these are the normal culprits that you see every single time we have suppression of news out there. So that's pretty much where we're at on it right now, guys. You're going to see more of this. I think tomorrow the headlines will be different, but just go to your Google search engine. If you even use Google, I try to get you to use DuckDuckGo and Brave.com if you can. They're much better search engines, and they do not pilfer the news to you like these people do. But go to your Google engine and just type in shooting, and you'll likely see this same thing pop up. This is a shooting that this is not a person who is deceased or anything like that. So this is just simply a way to manipulate and mold the news to where you're delivering the news for them to other people around the water cooler at work, to your family members, and on your Facebook feed. That's what this generally is when they do this. Guys, I'm going to scroll through your comment section for a minute because I like to open this up at the end of it. Again, I'd like to thank my friends at CMMG Rifles. Go to cmmg.com, Rock Island Armory, Armscore Ammunition. Go check them out as well. And my friends over at Falco Holsters. That's falcoholsters.com. Falco Holsters, just so you know, if you want to go to falcoholsters.com, you are going to find a holster that I helped them design. And this is the one right there. You're going to find that over there. So go check that out. You want to, this is a pretty cool hybrid holster right there. So just so YouTube knows, I was holding the holster, not the gun. So they shouldn't be doing anything to my live stream because I was holding the holster. I was not holding the gun. The holster was holding the gun. Nevertheless, I want you guys to know that my goal is, if you'll notice my email address right down here, send me any stories that you see, because the news media is pushing stories that we want to see and read about farther and farther down. That's why I did that last story, to show you guys that if you see something in your area, and some of you guys are really good about emailing me good information. I've got some sitting on my email right now that you folks have sent me. Some of the best things that I've covered in the past are from something that you guys sent me. Send it to this email right here, paul@legallyarmedamerica.com. Send it there. I'll take a look at it. I'll do as much research in a short amount of time as I possibly can, and hopefully run some kind of a story. Or if you just have something really nice or ugly that you would like to tell me, I get plenty of hate mail also. Certainly send it that. But I will tell you this. This is a pilot run of a fast-paced news type story that I intend to do every single day. We may talk about the newest gun that comes out, like sprinkle that in there also. But we're going to talk about hot topics out there in the gun industry. I'm going to try to move through them as quickly as I possibly can, so we have all the data we need. But this is simply a pilot. I want to get your feelings. Tell me what you think. Is this something that you would watch on a daily basis if I do it at the exact same time every single day? And maybe we're not able to do it every single day, but I'm certainly going to try. But I'd like to get your feedback on that, because this is something that I feel like I could use. It gives me a way to get videos out there in a quicker manner. Instead of doing a higher production model of putting these videos out, I can put a lot of these smaller stories into this, and it gives me more time to do the editing and all that on my other stories that I'm spending a little bit more time from a research standpoint on. So this would be pretty cool. Oh, and by the way, I can rip the audio from this and put it out there as a podcast too. I had some truck drivers talk to me in Indianapolis this weekend about doing that. So I'm going to see about doing that and start putting some of those out there as well. Excuse me. But your feedback is important to me. Let me know what you think. I think I'm going to have a special guest on tomorrow. Pretty sure I'm going to do that. There's a Colorado, if you guys have not been paying attention, Colorado has some very anti-gun things, and there's going to be a committee hearing, I believe, on Wednesday morning around 9:30, something like that. My goal is, I found out today through a friend of mine, if you don't know Ava Flanell, she does a lot of good stuff out there in the Colorado area. Ava and I have been friends for a long time. And Ava did confirm with me earlier that I can speak remotely via video to the committee, even though I am not a member I don't live in Colorado. I'm not a person who lives in their state, but I can still speak to the committee. So my goal is, whether they get to me or not, I don't know, but I do intend to get in the queue on Wednesday morning via video and speak to the committee during this hearing process. So my goal is to have Ava on tomorrow to speak a little bit more in depth about what's happening with that. So I may have that tomorrow, not 100% sure yet, but she and I are working on it, trying to get the details worked out to where she can be on here and talk a little bit more about what's happening in Colorado. I think it's important that we focus on a lot of these states that are doing things, because as we've stated in many of my videos before, as one state does, the other state copies them. Every time a state does something, especially if they succeed in pushing that legislation through, in many cases, you're going to have copycat states doing the same thing. And it's just a matter of copying and pasting the stupid legislation that's infringing upon our rights and trying to push it through also, especially whenever they have a situation like they do now. They've got, quote, mass shootings that have the public's attention right now and tugging at those emotional strings. A lot of the general public are genuinely stupid. They can't separate emotion from fact and responsibility. They just assume, because they're sad, that everything related to what they're sad about should suddenly be rammed through as legislation. And that's just a stupid, ignorant, lazy way to think. Unfortunately, a lot of Americans think like that. They simply deal upon emotion. And they're also dealing upon really fast moments in time. They're not able now, because so many things are quickly digested. The general public is not able to take a long walk at something and settle down and think something through without being emotional about it. And that's what a lot of these states and politicians are trying to do. They're trying to capitalize on the emotion that you have going on right now thinking that, yeah, now's the time to strike. Surely they'll let us put something anti-gun through and push it upon the law-abiding citizens of that particular state. So unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with, guys. So my goal is that if we can get enough information out about a lot of these states like Washington and Oregon right now are in horrible conditions. So is Illinois and Michigan right now. These people are copying what they see. And I'll tell you what they're trying to do. I really think that they're trying to one up each other. It's like every single time something really bad, you're like, wow, that's worse than New York, or that's worse than California. That's worse than Connecticut. It's like the next state comes out and says, really? Watch this. Because Washington did that last week, or they're going to probably do it this week. Inslee should be signing that anti-gun bill into law this week. So we're likely to see some pretty crazy stuff get pushed through right now. But guys, I want you to know that I always appreciate your feedback. The feedback that you send me, that's why I want you to see my email address on there, because I want you to send me stuff out there so that I can do my best to talk about what you want to talk about. If there's some other things that you'd rather talk about or prefer to talk about on this live stream, if we're able to do this every single day and do it daily at the same time, I want to hear from you. I want to know what you guys think, what you want to hear, what you want to talk about. So guys, I'm going to try to get out of here real quick. I always like to make this as quick as I can because I don't want to waste too much of your time. And I see the comment section is kind of on fire right now. So I'm going to leave the live stream up for just a moment. In fact, let me grab one more. Let's see if I can pull some headlines from some friends right here. Let's see. Yeah, my buddy's over at AmmoLand News. This is a good story right here. I'm going to leave you with. This is something that I believe my friend John Crump worked on this story. Yep. ATF says metal sliver is a machine gun. That's something that I put a video out on the other day. If you have not seen that yet, you might want to go read that one. That's a pretty interesting article. I did not a live stream, but a very informal video when I was in Indianapolis about this very topic. So if you get a chance, go to AmmoLand News and read this is John Crump who wrote this story. He's the one who had sent that to me. Go read his story about this. This is pretty eye-opening to show the intent of what the ATF is trying to do by saying that a sliver of a malfunctioning a sliver of a malfunctioning semi-automatic gun, suddenly that sliver, not the gun, is a machine gun because it made the gun fire incorrectly in full auto. So now anytime you have a gun that malfunctions, you potentially have a machine gun if it does make one trigger pull, send more than one round down range. That's the ATF. So I'm going to leave you guys with this real quick. So hopefully, and again, email me, put it in the comment section. I will come back and read this later on. And you can put it in the comment section once the video is not live anymore. Also, give me your opinion about whether or not this is something that you would watch on a daily basis. My goal is to clean it up a little bit, make it a little bit more palatable, and have better videos. Like if I'm talking about a particular story, I hope to be able to queue up some videos. But this was the best I could do today because just had a hunch that I wanted to try to run this by you guys to see if it's something that you would watch. So just think about it. Send me your opinions on that, and I would really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. You guys have a great evening. I'm going to talk to you hopefully tomorrow around the same time.